He handed me a breakup note instead of a ring at our party, not knowing I was pregnant, knew about his affair, and was about to begin my revenge. At our engagement party, I had planned to announce 2 life-altering events. Instead, my fiancé handed me a gift box in front of all our friends, and inside was a note that read, "I'm leaving you. You're a liability, and my future is too bright to be weighed down by you." Everyone watched, waiting for me to shatter. I just smiled, because the man I had spent 3 years loving had no idea what I was truly capable of. 2 months later, he was drunk on my doorstep, screaming my name. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The demolition has to come before the reconstruction. His name was Leo, and he was a masterpiece of curated perfection. He was a brand manager for a trendy tech startup, a job that seemed to primarily involve having expensive lunches and using the word synergy in contexts where it didn't belong. He was charming, attentive, and had this incredible ability to make you feel like you were the only person in the room. In a city like Chicago, where everyone is constantly looking over your shoulder for someone more important to talk to, that kind of focused attention is a powerful drug. Things moved quickly. By our 1-year anniversary, we were living together in a stylish, overpriced apartment in Lincoln Park, the kind of place that looks great on Instagram but keeps you awake at night with financial anxiety. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it felt solid. We were a power couple in the making, or so I thought. We had similar goals: eventually buy a condo, travel to Japan, maybe have kids someday. But Leo was always more concerned with the aesthetics of our life than the substance. He cared which restaurants we were seen at, what filters he used on our vacation photos, and whether our friends were the right kind of people. I should have seen it as the glaring red flag it was, but I was in love, and love has a way of turning red flags into harmless, festive bunting. About 4 months ago, my own carefully designed life plan went off the rails. I was exhausted, nauseous in the mornings, and my favorite brand of coffee suddenly tasted like battery acid. I took a pregnancy test on a Tuesday morning, mostly to rule it out. We were careful, but not that careful. 2 pink lines appeared with the brutal, undeniable clarity of a final verdict. I remember sliding down the cool tile of the bathroom floor, staring at that little plastic stick like it was an alien artifact. I was going to be a mother. I was a partner at my landscape architecture firm. I had a 5-year plan, and a baby was a beautiful, terrifying, unscheduled demolition of that plan. I spent a week living with my secret, a buzzing, electric thing under my skin. My best friend, Jenna, was the first person I told. She came over for our weekly girls' night with a bottle of expensive Malbec. When I stuck to sparkling water with a lime, she just raised an eyebrow. "Okay," she said, setting the wine aside. "Spill." She was practical, a lawyer, and she immediately helped me organize the chaos in my head. She asked about what I wanted, how I thought Leo would react, about insurance and maternity leave. She was my anchor. I decided to wait to tell Leo. Our engagement party was in 3 weeks. We planned an intimate gathering at our apartment with our closest friends. I imagined the moment: a champagne toast, sparkling cider for me, the happy, shocked faces of our friends, and the joy on Leo's. It would be perfect. A perfect announcement for our perfect life. In hindsight, my naivete is almost breathtaking. The weeks leading up to the party were strange. I was navigating the secret world of the first trimester, trying to hide the all-day sickness and the bone-deep exhaustion from a man who, it turned out, wasn't paying much attention anyway. He was distant, glued to his phone, coming home later and later. I chalked it up to stress from a big product launch at his work. I was so focused on my own secret that I failed to see he was keeping one of his own. The party was on a Saturday. I spent the day arranging flowers and setting up a grazing board that would have made any influencer proud. Leo went to pick up the custom cake, a task that somehow took him 4 hours. Our friends started arriving around 6. Jenna and her husband, my work colleague Sasha, our friends from college. The apartment was filled with music and laughter. I felt a nervous, joyful flutter in my stomach every time I caught Jenna's eye. Around 9 o'clock, Leo clinked his glass for attention. My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought, for a wild second, that he'd somehow found the pregnancy test and was about to steal my thunder. He launched into a beautiful speech about how I had changed his life, how I was his foundation, his inspiration. He looked directly into my eyes, his own shining with what I mistook for love. Then he handed me a small, perfectly wrapped box from a high-end jeweler. The room went quiet. Phones came out, ready to capture the proposal. I remember thinking, if this is a ring, do I still announce the baby tonight? Or does that steal his moment? The calculus of a dying relationship. I opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was not a ring, but a single, folded piece of paper. Confused, I unfolded it. The words were written in his clean, architectural handwriting. I'm leaving you. You're a liability, and my future is too bright to be weighed down by you. Your things will be packed by Monday. I looked up at him, searching for the punchline. His expression had transformed. The loving gaze was gone, replaced by a cold, distant amusement. The warmth was a performance. This, I realized, was the real him. He then said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Clara and I are done. It's been fun, but I've outgrown this relationship." And then he laughed. An actual, light, carefree laugh. A few of our friends, caught in the bizarre social whiplash, laughed nervously along with him. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out the front door. The silence that followed was a physical presence. It sucked the air out of the room. I stood there, the cruel note in my hand, the double announcement of a new life and a new career dying in my throat. Everyone stared, their faces a gallery of shock and confusion. Jenna was the first to move. She crossed the room in 3 long strides, snatched the note from my hand, and read it. The string of curses she unleashed was both vicious and deeply comforting. Then the chaos erupted. People talking at once, expressing outrage, confusion, concern. And me? I looked around at the faces of my friends, at the beautiful party I had thrown, at the wreckage of my life, and I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a demolition expert looking at a condemned building, knowing she's the only one with the blueprints to the new skyscraper that will be built in its place. I smiled because Leo, in his perfectly executed public execution, had made a fatal miscalculation. He thought he held all the cards. He didn't know I was pregnant with his child. He didn't know I had found the statements for his secret credit card 2 weeks earlier while looking for an envelope in his desk. He didn't know I had seen the intimate texts to S that popped up on our shared iPad while he was in the shower. And most importantly, he didn't know that I am not the kind of woman who shatters when broken. I'm the kind who meticulously collects the pieces and builds them into a weapon. So I smiled. I thanked everyone for coming. I assured them I was okay. I even cut the engagement cake, its cheerful congratulations Clara and Leo, a monument to a spectacular lie. Sasha, my work colleague, left almost immediately, claiming a sudden migraine. The timing was, shall we say, interesting. The rest of my friends stayed, a loyal Praetorian guard offering places to stay, shoulders to cry on, and in one case a cousin who takes care of problems. By midnight, everyone was gone except Jenna, who refused to leave my side. Once we were alone, the facade crumbled. The pregnancy, the profound betrayal, the searing public humiliation, it all came crashing down in a wave of ragged, painful sobs. Jenna just held me, a silent, solid presence in the storm. When the tears finally subsided, in the quiet, pre-dawn hours, I told her everything. The pregnancy, the credit card statements full of hotel charges and jewelry purchases I'd never seen, the screenshots of his texts with S. We both knew exactly who S was, especially after Sasha's hasty, guilty exit from the party. We stayed up until the sun rose, not just mourning, but planning. Jenna, in her lawyer mode, made a list. Change the locks. Separate bank accounts. Consult a specialist in family law. I, in my architect mode, began sketching the blueprints for a new life. Leo thought he had written the final chapter of our story. The morning after the demolition was unnervingly calm. I woke up on the couch to the smell of strong coffee and the quiet, efficient sounds of Jenna making breakfast. She had already been out and returned with bagels, cream cheese, and a folder of legal documents she'd printed at her office. Her practicality was a lifeline in the swirling chaos of my emotions. I managed a few bites of a bagel before the morning sickness, cruelly punctual, kicked in. Leo didn't come back that Sunday. The apartment was a strange mix of relief and torture, his presence still a ghost in every room. I spent the day in a state of hyper-focused survival mode, a detached project manager assessing the damage and outlining the reconstruction. I made lists. So many lists. A financial list, detailing every shared expense and asset, a legal list with questions for the lawyer Jenna had recommended, a personal list of people I needed to inform and people I needed to cut out. My brain, trained to think in terms of structure and support, was building a new kind of blueprint, one designed to withstand a hurricane. Jenna helped me pack up some of Leo's things. Not everything. Just one suitcase of his essentials. His favorite expensive shirts, his designer toiletries, the noise-canceling headphones he wore to ignore the world. It was a symbolic eviction, a clear statement that he was no longer welcome. The whole time, my phone was buzzing incessantly. Messages from our friends, mostly supportive. Messages from mutual acquaintances, mostly fishing for gossip. And a noticeable, deafening silence from Sasha. Monday morning arrived like a slap in the face. I called in sick to work, something I never do, and left a vague message for my boss. I had my first official prenatal appointment, the ultrasound a surreal, flickering image of a tiny, fluttering heartbeat that was both the source of my terror and my newfound strength. Then I met with the lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright, who listened to my story with a grim, professional empathy. She assured me that since we weren't married, the legal process would be about untangling assets, not a divorce. She was impressed with the evidence I'd already gathered, the credit card statements, the text screenshots. "You've already done half my job for me," she'd said with a small, approving smile. Around noon, I got a text from Leo. "I'll be by at 7 to get my things. Make sure you're not there." The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was almost impressive. I stared at the message, a fresh wave of rage washing over me. I typed and deleted a dozen scathing replies before settling on a simple, powerful two-letter word. No. He called immediately. I declined. Then I called Jenna, who, in her role as my newly appointed 4-star general, rallied the troops. By 6:30, my apartment was filled with a protective barrier of people who loved me. Jenna and her husband, my cousin Lana, who had extended her visit, and a few other close friends. Leo showed up at 7 on the dot. The look on his face when he opened the door, using his key, which I hadn't yet had a chance to change, and saw the silent, imposing, welcoming committee was a masterpiece of baffled indignation. He tried to act tough, demanding to know what was going on. Jenna's husband, Mark, who is built like a friendly refrigerator, simply stepped in front of him and handed him the single suitcase I had packed. "Clara has asked that you leave," Mark said, his voice calm but immovable. "The rest of your belongings can be retrieved at a mutually agreed-upon time, through her lawyer, once you've learned some basic human decency." Leo's eyes darted around the room, finally landing on me where I sat on the couch, deliberately sipping a cup of tea. He started to say something about how ridiculous this was, that he just wanted his things. I finally spoke, my voice clear and steady. "You're lucky I haven't changed the locks yet, Leo. You made your choice very publicly at my party. I'm just respecting it. We are past the point of casual conversation. From now on, you can speak to Ms. Albright." His voice actually squeaked when he repeated, "Lawyer?" The idea that his clean break would have legal consequences had clearly never occurred to him. He muttered something about me always needing an audience, a rich comment coming from the man who had dumped me in front of 24 people, grabbed the suitcase, and left. After the door closed, I finally cried again. Not for him, but for the sheer, exhausting drama of it all. The next morning, I called a locksmith. As he was drilling out the old lock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a work colleague, a kind man from the accounting department. "Hey, Clara, this is super awkward, but I thought you should know. Saw Sasha leaving Leo's new hotel room this morning when I was on my way to the gym. Didn't seem like a work meeting." It was the final confirmation I needed. The betrayal was complete, perpetrated by the man I loved and a woman I had shared professional and personal space with for 2 years. Instead of rage, I felt a strange, cold calm. I forwarded the text to Ms. Albright with a simple note, "For the file." The meeting with Leo at the coffee shop 2 weeks later was my idea. He had been sending a barrage of texts, alternating between anger and a sort of pathetic pleading. I agreed to meet him on my terms, public place, daytime. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. He launched into a rambling, self-pitying monologue about how he'd been unhappy, how he felt trapped, how a clean break was easier for everyone. I let him talk, sipping my tea. When he finally ran out of steam, I simply asked, "Is Sasha making you happy?" The deer-in-the-headlights shock on his face was a thing of beauty. He stumbled through denials so transparent they were insulting. I cut him off. "Leo, I know. I know about the secret credit card. I know about the hotel rooms. I know about the ridiculously expensive necklace you bought her with the money we were supposedly saving for a down payment. Just, for once in your life, be honest." He deflated like a punctured balloon. He tried the "it's not what you think" line, but his heart wasn't in it. I told him what mattered now was logistics. He could collect the rest of his things that Saturday. My friends would be there to supervise. After that, all communication would go through my lawyer. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist, a desperate, reflexive action. "How are you going to afford the apartment alone, Clara?" he asked, a note of genuine, panicked concern in his voice. "Your job barely covers your half of the rent." And that's when it all clicked into place. His concern wasn't for me. It was for him. What Leo didn't know, or had conveniently forgotten, was that for the past year, I had been quietly covering nearly 70% of our expenses. His lucrative startup job was mostly commission-based, and his commissions had been drying up. He'd been living a lie, using my steady architect's salary as a safety net, while presenting himself as the primary provider to everyone, including, apparently, Sasha. I smiled, a sweet, serene smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'll manage," I said. "Unlike some people, I actually save money instead of spending it on things I can't afford to impress people I don't respect." The color drained from his face. He knew that I knew everything. I gently removed his hand from my wrist and walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The emotional hurricane had passed. The reconstruction could now begin. The weeks that followed the coffee shop meeting were a period of quiet, methodical reclamation. The apartment, once a shared space filled with his things and his energy, slowly became mine again. On the Saturday of his final move-out, I went to my first prenatal yoga class. I returned that evening to an apartment that felt cavernous, empty, but clean. I spent the entire next day rearranging furniture, moving my desk into the second bedroom to create a proper office and a space for the nursery, and packing away every last photograph of him. I was not erasing the past. I was archiving it, filing it away in a box labeled "Lessons Learned." I settled into a new routine. Work, doctor's appointments, prenatal vitamins, careful budgeting. My boss, a wonderful older woman who had mentored me for years, was amazingly supportive when I finally told her I was pregnant and would be a single mother. She immediately helped me restructure my projects to allow for more flexible hours as my due date approached. I was navigating this new reality, not just surviving, but actively planning for a future that looked different, but not necessarily worse, than the one I'd envisioned before. The grapevine of a modern social circle is a powerful thing. Through Jenna, who heard from a friend who worked at the same ad agency as Sasha's roommate, I learned that the new romance wasn't exactly a fairy tale. Apparently, Sasha had been sold a bill of goods. Leo had painted himself as a successful, financially stable brand manager on the verge of a major promotion. The reality of his precarious financial situation and his move into a depressing studio apartment was not what she had signed up for. Their public arguments at trendy restaurants became a source of local gossip. About 6 weeks after the engagement party disaster, I started to show. It was just a small, gentle curve, but it was unmistakable. I decided it was time to be more open. The truth has a way of coming out, and I preferred to be the one to tell the story. I told my boss, then my other friends and family. I knew the news would eventually reach Leo. I was right. 7 weeks post-breakup, as my pregnancy hit the 17-week mark, my phone erupted with a series of frantic texts from him. "Is it true? Are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? We need to talk immediately. Answer your phone, Clara. This involves me too." I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because I truly didn't know what to say yet. I needed to decide what role, if any, I wanted him to have in our child's life. The texts grew more desperate, more demanding. "I have rights, you know. You can't keep my child from me. Call me back or I'm coming over." That last one prompted me to finally respond. "Do not come to my apartment uninvited. I will call the police if you do. I will contact you when I am ready to discuss this civilly. He backed off for exactly 2 days. Then he showed up. It was just after 11 on a Thursday night. I was in bed, propped up on pillows, reading a book about infant sleep schedules when I heard it. A car door slamming. Then heavy, uneven footsteps on the path to my door. Then pounding, not a polite knock. Pounding that shook the door in its frame, and Leo's voice, slurred but unmistakable. "Clara, open the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk about our baby." My heart leaped into my throat. For a moment, I was frozen, unsure what to do. Call the police, call Mark, hide in the bathroom and hope he went away. Then I heard a sound that made the decision for me, a choked, ragged sob. He was outside my door, drunk and crying, alternating between angry demands and pathetic pleas. "I made a mistake, Clara. Please just let me in. It's my baby too. I have a right." Despite everything, some small, traitorous part of me felt a flicker of something. Not sympathy, but a grim recognition. His grand exit strategy, his brilliant new life, his escape from his liability of a girlfriend, none of it was working out as planned. Reality had finally caught up with Leo, and it had the face of an unexpected baby and the crushing weight of his own financial instability. I got out of bed, my hand resting protectively on my small bump, and approached the door cautiously. "Leo, you're drunk," I said, my voice loud and clear through the closed door. "Go home. We can talk tomorrow when you're sober." He shouted back that he needed to see me now, needed to see if it was true. I confirmed it. "Yes, I'm pregnant, 18 weeks. And yes, the baby is yours, but this is not the way to discuss it. You need to go home." There was a dull thud against the door, the sound of his forehead resting against the wood. He mumbled something so quietly I almost missed it. "Sasha left me," he said, his voice thick with alcohol and self-pity. "She said I wasn't who she thought I was. She said I lied about everything." I couldn't help myself. "That sounds familiar," I said, my voice cool. He laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. He admitted he'd messed up badly and begged me again to let him in. I took a deep breath. "No, Leo, not tonight. Go home. Sober up. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe on Main Street at 10 a.m. if you're not there on time, or if you show up like this again, that's it. No more chances." He was quiet for so long I thought he might have passed out. Then softly, "Okay, tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'll be there." I heard him walk away. A car engine started, not his. He'd taken a cab. At least he'd done one responsible thing. As I climbed back into bed, my phone lit up with a text from him. "I'm sorry for everything, for the party, for the note. I'll make it right somehow." I didn't respond. Words were easy. Leo had always been good with words, but I needed actions now. I would meet him tomorrow. I would listen. I would set boundaries. And I would decide what came next, not based on his needs, but on what was best for me and my child. I half expected him not to show up. But when I walked into the cafe at 9:55 the next morning, he was already there, sitting at a small table in the corner. He looked like absolute trash. Bloodshot eyes, the same wrinkled shirt from the night before, and a nervous energy that made the table visibly shake from his jiggling leg. He had already ordered me a decaf latte. It was a small, thoughtful gesture, except I'd switched to herbal tea because coffee, even decaf, made me nauseous now. It was a perfect metaphor for our entire relationship. A well-intentioned assumption about my needs, completely disconnected from my actual reality. He started with a barrage of apologies, a frantic checklist of his sins. The party, the note, the cheating, showing up drunk. I let him talk himself out, sipping the peppermint tea I'd ordered to replace the unwanted latte. When he finally ran out of steam, I asked the only question that mattered. "What exactly do you want, Leo?" He was thrown and stammered about wanting to be involved, to do the right thing, maybe even try again. I laughed at that last part. Not a mean laugh, just one of genuine, baffled surprise that he thought reconciliation was even in the realm of possibility. I steered the conversation to the reality of the situation. I told him I'd already consulted a lawyer about child support and custody arrangements. I explained that I wasn't keeping him from his child, but that trust had to be rebuilt from the ground up, brick by painful brick. That meant scheduled visits, proven financial responsibility, and consistent, sober behavior. He got frustrated, saying I was being cold and calculated. "Yes, I am," I agreed. That's what's required to build something that lasts, Leo. A solid plan, a strong foundation. You of all people should understand that. You just blew up our foundation with a cheap theatrical explosion to impress an audience. I'm building this one to last. Before I left, I handed him a folder containing the baby's information: ultrasound photos, due date, doctor details, along with the preliminary child support worksheet my lawyer had drafted. He looked at the black and white image of our child, and for the first time, his mask of frantic energy cracked, revealing a flicker of genuine, terrified awe. The next few months brought subtle, seismic shifts. Leo found a new job, a step down in title and pay, but it was steady. He signed the child support agreement without argument. He enrolled in a parenting class at the community center. Our interactions were cautious, transactional, focused solely on the baby. I, meanwhile, was focused on building my own new world. My firm allowed me to take on a major project from home, designing a new public park for the city. It was a dream job, a chance to create something beautiful and lasting. As I worked on the blueprints, another kind of blueprint was being laid in my personal life. I had decided to convert my second bedroom into a nursery and needed some custom-built shelves and a changing table to fit the awkward space. Jenna recommended a local carpenter, a man named Matteo. He was quiet, thoughtful, and his hands, though rough and calloused, moved with an incredible grace and precision. He listened to my ideas, looked at my sketches, and then made suggestions that were both more practical and more beautiful than what I had imagined. As he worked in my apartment over the next few weeks, we started talking. He spoke of wood the way I spoke of plants, with a deep, abiding respect for its nature. He was a widower with a grown daughter, and he had a calm, steady presence that felt like a balm on my frayed nerves. The baby, my little Maya, arrived 6 weeks ago, a whirlwind of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Leo was at the hospital. He was awkward and mostly useless, but he was there. He cried when he held her, a raw, clumsy display of emotion that was the most honest I had ever seen from him. Life is now a chaotic, beautiful, sleep-deprived routine. Leo is a consistent presence, a co-parent who is slowly, painstakingly earning a sliver of my trust. He shows up for his scheduled visits. He brings diapers. Last week, he brought a tiny, ridiculous leather jacket for a 6-week-old. He is trying. And then there's Matteo. He finished the nursery furniture weeks ago, but he keeps finding excuses to stop by, to drop off a children's book he found at a flea market, to bring me a coffee because he was in the neighborhood. Last week, he came over to look at a creaky floorboard. After he'd fixed it, he stayed and helped me soothe Maya when she was colicky, his large, gentle hands expertly patting her back until she calmed. The other night, after a particularly long day, I was sitting in the finished nursery, rocking Maya to sleep. The room was perfect. The warm glow of the lamp fell on the beautiful, custom-built shelves, the wood grain smooth and strong. The whole room felt safe, solid, and built with care. Leo, with his grand gestures and flashy promises, had built me a life that was a beautiful, hollow facade. Matteo, with his quiet competence and genuine respect, had built me a bookshelf. And I realized, with a sudden, startling clarity, which one was more real and which one would actually last. The blueprint for my future was finally becoming clear, and it looked nothing like the one I had lost. It looked better.